I never thought a simple dinner could show me exactly how people see you. You spend years trying to be the quiet one, the reliable one, the guy who gets things done without a show. And then one night, under the warm light of a restaurant chandelier, someone decides to make you the evening's entertainment. It started with an email. Team dinner Friday night, attendance encouraged. Marcus, my boss, loved these things. Free food, loud laughter, and just enough alcohol to blur professionalism into arrogance. I almost didn't go. I don't drink much, and I'm not the kind of guy who laughs on command. But missing it would have been noticed, and the last thing I needed was to stand out for the wrong reason. The restaurant was one of those high-end places where the chairs are heavier than the plates. Everyone was already there when I arrived. Marcus at the head of the table, 2 project leads, the HR manager, a few junior analysts. The CFO, Mr. Hayes, was there too, scrolling through his phone, bored out of his mind. Marcus greeted me with his usual over-the-top smile. "Look who finally made it, our numbers guy. You got lost on the way to the valet?" Laughter, small, polite. I smiled back. "Traffic," I said. He clapped me on the back like I'd just scored him a promotion. "Grab a seat, champ. We were just talking about ambition. You might want to take notes." That was his favorite game, playing the mentor, teaching lessons no one asked for. As the night went on, the wine kept flowing. Conversation turned from work to money, money to cars, cars to status. Someone mentioned watches. Marcus leaned forward, eyes glinting like he'd been waiting for that opening all evening. "So what are you rocking these days, man?" he asked me. Loud enough for the table to pause. I glanced at my wrist. "Casio." "Casio?" he repeated, drawing out the syllables like a punchline. "Didn't know they still made those." Laughter again, this time less polite, more relieved, like everyone had permission to enjoy it. I smiled because that's what you do. He wasn't done. "Come on, don't tell me you still drive that little Corolla too?" "Yeah," I said. "It still runs fine." Marcus turned to the CFO. "See? That's dedication. Man's allergic to success." Mr. Hayes didn't laugh. He didn't look up from his phone, but the others did. Awkward giggles, quiet sips, the kind of silence people fill because they're afraid of it. Marcus grinned, enjoying himself. "You ever think about, I don't know, aiming higher, getting something that says you've made it?" I looked at him. "What I drive doesn't have to say anything." "Oh, it says something," he shot back. "It says you're content being ordinary." That landed. The table went quiet for a beat too long. I could have said something then, something sharp, something that would have shut him down. But I didn't. Instead, I picked up my glass, looked him straight in the eye, and said, "You're right, I think small." He blinked. The smile faltered for a second, then came back wider, faker. "Hey, I'm just joking, man. Don't take it personally." "I'm not," I said. "Just making sure you hear me." The CFO finally looked up from his phone, just long enough to study me. Not Marcus, not the table. Me. Then he went back to scrolling. Dinner moved on, but the energy had changed. The laughter didn't hit as easy. Even Marcus's voice started to strain. I kept quiet, finished my meal, listened. When the check came, he made a show of paying for everyone. "Perks of being the boss," he said, sliding his card toward the waiter. "You'll get there one day, maybe." "Maybe," I said. Outside in the parking lot, he slapped me on the shoulder again. "Lighten up, man. You gotta play the game if you want to win." "I'm not playing," I told him. He laughed, got into his BMW, and drove off, music loud enough to echo through the glass doors. I stood there for a while, watching the taillights disappear, feeling the night air against my face. I wasn't angry. Not really. Just quiet in a way that makes other people nervous. Because the truth is, he wasn't wrong about everything. I did think small. I kept things low, silent, unassuming. But not because I lacked ambition. It was because sometimes when you're sitting at a table full of men bragging about power they don't really own, it's easier to listen. And that's when you learn who's who. When I got home, I checked my inbox. A report from the board was waiting. Financial summaries, projections, pending acquisitions. At the bottom was one note from Mr. Hayes. Dinner was informative. Let's talk Monday. I leaned back in my chair, smiled faintly, and closed the laptop. Marcus thought he'd embarrassed a subordinate that night. He had no idea he'd just made a fool of himself in front of one of his company's quietest investors. And that was just the beginning. You can tell when a story's spread. The silence changes shape. By Monday morning, the laughter from Friday night had turned into hallway whispers. People didn't look at me, they looked around me. The kind of guilt that hides behind coffee cups. When I stepped into the office, Marcus was already holding court near the glass wall, retelling his funny dinner story. And I said, Cassio. Can you believe it? The guy's practically allergic to ambition. They laughed again. The same laugh, just recycled for daylight. I walked past without a word. The intern, Mia, sweet kid, new, looked up from her desk. Hey, she whispered, for what it's worth, that wasn't cool. You didn't deserve that. I smiled. Thanks, Mia. It's fine. It wasn't fine, but not for the reason they thought. It wasn't about pride or dignity. It was about the math. I'd spent 12 months inside this branch, observing, taking notes, quietly building a picture of its culture. And in one dinner, Marcus had just proven what kind of leader he really was. I wasn't a numbers guy, not really. The spreadsheets I checked weren't about profit margins. They were about people, attitudes, how managers treated those they thought had no power. It was something I'd started doing years ago, after watching companies rot from the top down. But that's not what Marcus saw. He saw a quiet man who didn't compete, who didn't brag, who didn't threaten him. And that's the kind of man people like him underestimate. At noon, I heard his voice again, this time from the conference room. The glass walls didn't hide much. He was talking to the CFO, Mr. Hayes. Look, I handle my team. I know who's got drive and who's dead weight. Some people just don't have it. You have to crush weakness early. Crush weakness early. That sentence landed in my chest like a slow spark. I turned away, not to hide anger. There wasn't any, just clarity. It's strange how insults, when they hit the right frequency, stop feeling like attacks. They start sounding like confessions. The day went on. Meetings, emails, numbers. Normalcy was my camouflage. Marcus strutted through the floor like a man who'd won something. I watched him through the reflection on my monitor, laughing too loud, clapping people on the shoulders like he was the hero of his own story. He didn't know that the CFO had already scheduled a private board review that afternoon, one I was on the calendar for, under a different title. Not data analyst, not finance associate, just consultant. By the time 3 p.m. came around, Hayes sent a message through internal chat. Come to 7B at 3:15. Bring the latest branch performance sheets. 7B wasn't one of the usual meeting rooms. It was upstairs near the board office, the kind of place where middle management rarely stepped. I went up quietly, portfolio in hand. Inside, Hayes was alone, jacket off, sleeves rolled. He gestured for me to sit. You handled Friday well, he said. I shrugged. I try not to take things personally. He smiled faintly. That's good, because some people are about to take things very personally. He turned his laptop around. On the screen was a chart. Employee retention, turnover rates, expense reports. The branch was leaking money through client entertainment, dinners, events, overpriced wine, networking. Marcus's signature was everywhere. Interesting pattern, Hayes said. Yeah, I replied. He's been using budget codes meant for vendor development. Hayes nodded. That's what I thought. Anything else I should know? I paused, then said quietly, I'd let him keep talking for a few more days. People show their real selves when they think they're untouchable. He closed the laptop. You're good at this. I've had practice. When I left the room, the office felt smaller, like the walls had started to listen. That evening, Marcus sent another all-staff email. Great energy this week, team. Remember, success favors the bold. Keep aiming high. Attached was a photo from the dinner, everyone smiling. Me off to the side, blurred by motion. He didn't notice that Hayes was CIC'd. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I just sat there, the hum of the fluorescent lights filling the silence, and thought about that one line again. Crush weakness early. Because the thing about people like Marcus is, they don't realize how quickly strength and power trade places. They think they're climbing a ladder, but half the time, it's someone else holding it. That night, as I drove home in my little Corolla, I passed by the restaurant where it all started. The parking lot was empty, chairs stacked, lights dimmed. I remembered the look on Marcus's face when I'd told him he was right. When I said, I think small. I smiled to myself, because he'd bought it completely. And he was about to learn, well, small thinking can build when you give it enough time and discipline. When I got home, there was a message from Hayes waiting on my personal line. Dinner next week with the full board. Please attend. Same restaurant. I sat back, exhaled, and let that sink in. Marcus was going to be there, the CFO too. And this time, I wouldn't be the quiet guy in the cheap suit. I wouldn't have to say a word. Because the numbers and the truth were about to speak for me. And Marcus, he'd finally get what he asked for. He'd learn exactly what it feels like to crush weakness early. There's a particular kind of silence that fills a restaurant before something goes wrong. That low, expectant hum of voices, glass, and laughter. Right before a single sound cuts through and everything stops. I knew I'd hear that silence again. Friday came faster than I expected. Same place. Same long table under the same expensive lighting. But the seating chart had changed. Marcus wasn't at the head anymore. The CFO, Hayes, sat there now. Marcus took a spot 2 seats down, near the middle. Not by choice. He looked tired. Maybe he'd felt the shift in air, too. Still, when he saw me walk in, he forced a grin. Look who's back, he said. Round 2? Something like that, I replied. He tried to joke, but it landed flat. People were careful now. Laughs too soft, smiles too measured. The kind of politeness that comes from uncertainty. They'd felt the tremor, even if they didn't know what caused it. Dinner started normal enough. Toasts, compliments. A few awkward attempts at small talk. I stayed quiet, watching Marcus pretend he still ran the room. He poured himself more wine, louder this time, filling the space Hayes wouldn't. About halfway through, Hayes set down his fork and pulled out his phone. Anyone see the new Forbes list? He said casually. The top private equity contributors for this quarter. Pretty impressive group. Marcus chuckled. Yeah, must be nice. Whole different league. Hayes scrolled, frowning slightly. Wait a second. He turned the screen around, tapping on an entry halfway down the page. Number 17, he said. Does this name look familiar to anyone? People leaned in. The name on the screen was mine. Full name. Photo. Marcus froze mid-sip. The glass stopped an inch from his mouth. You could hear the ice shifting inside. The silence hit. The kind that drops like a curtain. Hayes kept his eyes on me. Would you like to explain, Mr. Moore? I smiled. There's not much to explain. A few of the analysts blinked between us, confused. Marcus tried to laugh, but it came out thin, desperate. Wait, this is a joke, right? No, Hayes said. It's not. I looked at Marcus, calm as ever. You were right, Marcus. I do think small. I think about people, culture, how leadership looks when no one's watching. He swallowed hard, color draining from his face. So you're saying... I'm saying you've spent the last year reporting to one of the primary investors in your own company. Someone at the far end whispered, Holy shit. Marcus's hand twitched toward his glass again, but he didn't drink. He just sat there, breathing shallow, staring at the tablecloth like it might give him a script. Hayes closed his phone and set it beside his plate. For the record, I wasn't aware of Mr. Moore's secondary role until recently. He's been conducting an internal audit, quietly, at the board's request. A few gasps. A napkin slipped off someone's lap. Marcus blinked fast, sweat starting at his temple. Look, if there's been some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said. I saw what I needed to see. Hayes leaned back. The board will review the findings on Monday. You might want to clear your schedule. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it again. His jaw worked like he was trying to chew the silence. I was joking that night, he said finally. It was just banter. I know, I replied. You were being yourself. That was the point. He looked around the table for backup, but no one met his eyes. The same people who'd laughed with him last week now busied themselves with their forks, their water glasses, their guilt. The CFO raised his glass slightly. To clarity, he said, tone dry, and to remembering that humility is cheaper than lawsuits. I didn't drink. I just stood, laid my napkin on the table, and nodded once to Hayes. Thank you for dinner. Marcus started to rise, too, words tripping out of him. Grant, wait. I stopped him with a glance. Don't. You've already said enough. Then I walked out, calm. No rush, no anger. Just the quiet satisfaction of a man who finally gets to stop pretending. Outside, the night was cool. Streetlights painted silver lines on the hood of my car. I stood there a moment, hearing the muffled voices from inside, the scrape of chairs, the sound of someone's world collapsing behind glass. As I unlocked my car, Hayes stepped out. You handled that cleanly, he said. I've learned that yelling doesn't make truth louder. He nodded. We'll take care of the rest Monday. You won't need to be there. I'll be here anyway, I said. Old habits. He smiled faintly. Marcus won't be. I drove off, windows down, city air moving through the quiet. No adrenaline, no triumph. Just stillness, like a storm that's already passed, leaving everything sharper, cleaner. When I got home, my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. I didn't know. Please call me. I didn't reply. Some lessons need silence to stick. Instead, I poured myself a drink, opened the same Forbes article Hayes had shown, and stared at my own picture. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like balance, finally restored. By Monday, the rumor mill was spinning faster than the stock ticker. HR meetings, lockouts. Marcus's office was emptied before lunch. They said he left without saying a word, but I liked to imagine the look on his face when he realized that the man he mocked for thinking small had been quietly holding the entire company ledger in his back pocket. And then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. The Monday after the dinner felt like waking up after a storm. The air still heavy, the sky pale, everything too clean to be real. When I walked into the office, no one spoke. Phones rang, keyboards clicked, but the usual noise of conversation was gone. People looked busy the way children do when the teacher walks in mid-whisper. Marcus's office door was open, empty, the nameplate gone. Just a faint outline where it had been screwed in. Hayes stepped out of the conference room, nodded once. Handled, he said simply. I nodded back. Thank you. He hesitated, then added quietly, You were right to stay quiet. You learn more that way. I always do, I said. That week passed like a slow exhale. The emails changed tone. Colleagues who'd ignored me for months suddenly remembered my name. Even HR sent a message. We appreciate your professionalism during recent transitions. Transitions, that's what they called it. But I didn't want applause. I didn't even want acknowledgement. I wanted distance. So when Hayes offered me the branch permanently, I turned it down. I'm not built for the spotlight, I told him. I build things that last longer than it. He smiled. You always did. Instead, I recommended someone else, Mia, the intern who'd quietly defended me after the dinner. Smart, observant, uncorrupted by Marcus's habits. She didn't know until Hayes announced it on Friday. She just stared at me, stunned. Why me? She whispered. Because you saw people, not positions, I said. Don't lose that. The look on her face, shock, then pride, then gratitude, was worth more than any promotion. I started spending more time at the main office after that, reviewing other branches, meeting quietly with partners. Sometimes people recognized me from the Forbes article. They'd get nervous, sit straighter, talk smoother. I hated that. Money doesn't change people. Exposure does. It shows them what they already are, just louder. In the evenings, I'd go home, cook something simple, read. No noise, no politics, just quiet. The kind of quiet that feels earned. Once, a former colleague texted me out of the blue. Can't believe what happened. He really deserved it. Must feel good. I typed, deleted, then typed again. It doesn't feel good. It feels fair. Fair is underrated. It doesn't give you adrenaline or applause. It gives you peace, the kind that lets you breathe without checking who's watching. Weeks later, I stopped by that same restaurant, the one where Marcus had tried to turn me into a punchline. Different crowd now, new manager, same heavy chairs. They still remembered me? Table for one, the waiter asked. Always, I said. I ordered the same thing I had that night. Steak, medium rare. Ate slowly, watched the door like I was waiting for a ghost that wouldn't come. Halfway through dinner, I noticed a small detail I'd missed before. A clock on the far wall. Same one that ticked through Marcus's jokes that night. Same minute hand that outlasted his career. Time has a sense of humor. As I signed the bill, the waiter smiled. You were here before, right? Company dinner. Something like that, I said. How'd it go? Expensive lesson, I told him. He laughed, not knowing what I meant. Outside, the night air was soft, warmer than it had any right to be. The city lights flickered like they were trying to apologize for being artificial. I stood there for a moment, watching people rush past. Suits, phones, noise, the world spinning around its own ego, and I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Stillness. Not satisfaction, not pride, just stillness. The kind you get when everything unnecessary finally falls away. Back home, I set my phone on the counter next to my old Casio. It was scratched, worn, still ticking perfectly. People spend fortunes trying to buy symbols of success. I already had one, a reminder that value doesn't have to shine. It just has to last. I made coffee, sat by the window, and let the silence fill the space. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably rewriting his resume, maybe telling a different version of the story, one where he wasn't the villain. People do that. They heal by editing the truth. That's fine. I didn't need the world to know what happened. The right people already did. Before heading to bed, I checked an email from Hayes. Subject line, board feedback. Message, they were impressed. We'd like you to continue quietly. Same structure, different region. I smiled. Same structure, different stage, same lesson. I closed the laptop and turned off the lights. The house was silent except for the ticking of that old watch on the counter. It wasn't mocking or dramatic, just steady, honest, patient. I leaned back against the doorway and whispered to no one. He laughed at my watch. I checked it when he left. Turns out, time has a way of humbling everyone.